You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to Achtung Millwall, a Monday show after that wonderful 1-0 win up there at Middlesbrough. Now, one of my ideas for the new season is, like a lot of my ideas I suppose, it's a rehash of an old idea. I was going to do some preview shows for the fixtures as we go through the forthcoming campaign. Revisiting old fixtures from the past of an equivalent fixture that's upcoming. So, for example, tomorrow night we are due to play Reading in the Carabao Cup, formerly known as the League Cup. Many sponsorship incarnations for the League Cup, but we're due tomorrow night to play Reading, a competition that's become much maligned, let's be quite honest with you. If the FA Cup's taken a tumble in its standing, the EFL League Cup, as I know it, League Cup, has taken the proverbial kick in the balls, and is a competition that very few take terribly seriously nowadays. But nevertheless, I'm going to go along there tomorrow night, more out of a sense of naive excitement for the season ahead, really. So nevertheless, I thought it would be quite nice to pick as close an equivalent fixture from the past as I could find from Mill history. And we're playing Reading at home tomorrow night, as I've said. So I've had a quick look through the the highways and byways of Millwall history, and I've found a League Cup fixture, 4th of September 1984, dear listeners. Wow, that's 39 years ago. Millwall 4, Reading 3. This was a two-legged affair back then in the round one of the Milk Cup, as it was known. Do you remember the Milk Cup, listeners, older listeners? So a two-legged affair. First leg had finished 1-1 at Elm Park, that would have been back then, for Reading. And the home leg at the Den, Coldblow Lane, the proper Den, as if I put my curmudgeon's hat on for a moment, that was a 4-3 win for the Lions. Now, I was not there for this game, listeners, and I don't know why. I've been racking my brains looking at this fixture. This would be the early 80s. I went a little bit off the boil at that point. I was in the midst of various things, and I don't think I made it to this fixture, midweek League Cup round 1 second leg game at the Den. Only 3,590 other hardy souls did make it there, not including me on this occasion, so I can't claim any moral high ground over those that didn't go that night. But yeah, a 4-3 win for the Lions, which would lead us to progress to the round 2 of that competition that season, where we would exit over 2 legs there again to Chelsea, a 3-1 loss at Stamford Bridge, and then a 1-1 draw at the Den, seeing us out of the competition for that particular season. Incidentally, the League Cup has always been a Cinderella. We've never really progressed terribly far in it. I can remember off the top of my head, and I've done zero research on this question, it's just occurred to me as I'm talking to you. We had a quarter-final in the 90s, didn't we? Was it Swindon away? Was that Jan Arger Fjortoft under Mick McCarthy? We went down 2 or 3-1 at Swindon, I believe. That was a quarter-final of the League Cup, as memory serves, so that would be around about mid-90s, 95-ish, I think. And then the only other time that I can remember us ever making progress in the League Cup would be in the 70s, when I first started going, actually, about 2 years into my Millwall career, such as you can call it a career. We played Norwich during the era of power cuts and the miners' disputes of the early 70s. And I remember going along, I think I mentioned bunking off school. It was a Wednesday afternoon fixture, quarter-final of the League Cup, and it drew quite a decent crowd for an afternoon game. Not as many as it would have drawn in the evening, naturally. And I think we went out after a replay. It was a draw, I think, at the Den, and then didn't go to the replay fixture at Norwich. I think that was a 1-0 loss up there. So that was a quarter-final exit there, early 70s and early 90s. But really, the League Cup has never shaken our world, has it, listeners? Not like the FA Cup. There's no track record of success or excitement. The only other League Cup fixture that springs to mind immediately, I suppose, for different reasons, will be the West Ham fixture about 15 years ago now. But that was for very different reasons. Let's not dwell on those reasons as to why that's memorable. So anyway, we're considering this Millwall versus Reading 4-3 win for the Lions, played on September the 4th, 1984. Wow. A long while ago, 39 years, listeners. I don't know what age you are listening to this show, but there are sometimes you look at a date and you think it's just like yesterday, and it's not, it's 39 years ago. I find with the release of various albums now, it's like the 50th anniversary of, I don't know, the Bowie album that I particularly love, for example, Golden Years, the Young Americans or whatever. Station to Station, that turns out to be 50 years ago. So similar kind of vibes here. Not much in the way of reportage from the national press. The Daily Mirror did carry a short paragraph in amongst a series of short paragraphs about the evening's action. Millwall battled back to win a Milk Cup thriller at the Den last night, 5-4 on aggregate, they say. Trailing 2-3 at half-time to Reading, Dean Neal brought the scores level with a superb overhead kick, and then Nicky Chatterton put Millwall through after Alan Judge had brilliantly saved Steve Lovell's 78th minute penalty. Neal and Lovell had twice put Millwall ahead in the first half, with Reading storming back through David Crown with 2 and Trevor Senior. That's the Daily Mirror report. There's actually a fairly extensive report in the Reading Evening Post. But I'm just going to run through the Millwall team, certainly, for that night, before I go through the Evening Post report, which is quite in depth. The evening, the team for this evening would have been managed by George Graham, of course, a huge landmark figure in Millwall history. We've mentioned him a good few times on these kinds of shows over time. But anyway, the Millwall side for this particular fixture is Paul Sansom, Keith Stevens, Les Briley, Dave Martin, Bill Roffey, Anton Chudakovsky, Dave Cusack, Nicky Chatterton, Steve Lovell, Kevin Bremner and Dean Neal. Substitute unused on this particular night is Alan McCleary. I'm going to read through the Evening Post. If you'll indulge me, it's a bit of a cheat really to read out a press report, but sometimes it captures a fixture that you weren't at in a way that you can't do yourself. So they've got a list of how the goals went in. So let's go through that actually. 16 minutes, Dean Neal heads in. Nicky Chatterton's cross to give Millwall the lead, 16 minutes in. For Crown, I don't know his first name, for Reading. Crown equalises almost straight from the kickoff, 17 minutes, it's one each. 25 minutes, Steve Lovell heads in Kevin Bremner's cross to put the Lions back in front. 29 minutes, Senior puts the Royals, Reading, back on level terms with a close range shot, so 2-2 inside half an hour. 34 minutes, disaster from Millwall. Crown puts Reading ahead with a superbly chipped shot, it says. Half time comes and goes. Into the second half, 72 minutes. Dean Neal makes it all square again with a spectacular overhead kick. And then 78 minutes, the coup de grace. Nicky Chatterton follows up to grab the winner after Judge in the Reading goal saves Steve Lovell's penalty. The report is by Steve Thompson of the Reading Evening Post. It says Reading came off the worst in a 7-goal thriller at the Den last night to crash out the Milk Cup at the first hurdle for the 4th successive season. We must have exited that competition certainly at second round level for some years now. I can't think of us making it much beyond the second round for many, many years, listeners. Can you? I've done no research on that particular point. It's just occurred to me as I'm talking, but I don't remember us making any progress. I mean, we mentioned quarterfinals, forget about them. I think we've gone out of this Carabao Cup, EFL Cup, whatever version you want to call it. I think we've gone out at first or second round level for a long, long time. Decade? That long, is it? Don't know. Have to check. But anyway, we don't make much progress very quickly in the League Cup. No bitter recriminations from Reading manager Ian Branthwaite. There's a name from the past. After the game, he was merely proud that his team had helped make this first round, second leg, such a classic cup tie. Not only was it the second game that Reading had lost under his managership, but it was surely the most exciting. Then it goes on to describe the goal sequence, which we've done already. Sounds like a full-blooded affair. Interestingly, Steve Wood, who would later come on and play for such a crucial part in the Millwall promotion season, of course, of 87-88, was booked just after they played for Reading at this point, just after the half-time break. So we can continue. Wood had survived an earlier penalty appeal against him for handling a cross from Dean Neal. Further loud shouts for spot kicks when first Steve Richardson shoved at Lovell in the back, then Derek Christie on his debut for the Royals fouled Chudakovsky. But the referee, Mike James, gave free kicks both times outside the box. An equaliser was always on the cards as we go through the second half, and it came eventually in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. That's quite a big claim, isn't it? I can think of some really spectacular situations where, equalisers might go in. But Dean Neal collected a 72nd minute throw-in with his back to goal and left Alan Judge dumbfounded, a good word, dumbfounded, by an explosive overhead kick into the net. If anyone listening to the show saw that, I weren't there, as I've said, but if you saw that, do drop us a message. Describe that goal. They're saying an explosive overhead kick, and the Daily Mirror's followed suit, actually. Thereafter, it was only a matter of time before Reading conceded another, says the Evening Post, as their midfield melted visibly away. Kevin Bremner shot just wide before the outstanding Chudakovsky made yet another darting run into their penalty area, into the Mill penalty area. Both Duncan and Richardson challenged him, and the Mill midfielder crashed to the ground with a Hollywood flourish. This is a hometown paper, listeners. This is a Reading paper. He's gone down with a Hollywood flourish. That's got like, I don't know, I'm picturing a dance kind of Ginger Rogers or someone going down with Fred Astaire in close proximity. The player appeared to fall deliberately. Wow, it says, rather than being chopped down. Men are chopped down. This bloke's gone down. Chudakovsky's gone down like a Swan Lake, I think, is the implication of the Evening Post's reportage. But the referee, after a moment's hesitation, pointed to the spot. Still, the drama wasn't over for Judge. The goalkeeper is called Judge, who superbly saved Steve Lovell's spot kick before Nicky Chatterton hammered in the rebound. It was the second time in 2 games that Judge had been kept out of the penalty area, only to be beaten by the follow-up shot. There was still time for Judge to pull off another spectacular save from Nicky Chatterton before the close. 2 home players, Dave Martin and Keith Stevens, received cautions late on to bring the total of players booked in the match to 5. And as we've said, the Mill side, Sansom, Stevens, Ruffy, Briley, Martin, Cusack, Lovell, Kevin Bremner, Dean Neal, Nicky Chatterton, the Chudakovsky and the substitute McCleary. The Reading side, I've got it listed here. Let's go through that. Judge, Williams, Richardson, Bevan, Hicks, Wood, Steve Wood, Duncan, Horrocks, there's another name from Millwall past, Dean Horrocks. Senior, I think that was Trevor Senior, I remember that name. Christie, Crown, substitute Gilks. That's Michael Gilks. Could be. Attendance 3,590. I've picked out 2 names from that team. Bill Roffey is a name that I don't think we've mentioned ever, and we may not mention him in many other circumstances. Part of my commitment to this show is to produce the unusual, the obscure, the quirks, and the nooks and the crannies of Mill history. So I've gone for Bill Roffey, listeners, as one of my 2 name picks from that Mill side. I remember Bill Roffey playing for Orient through the 70s. He was just one of those names that stuck in my head from those years. He was a left back, played 52 games for the London. I'm quoting here from Neil's Mill Who's Who, an invaluable document. If you're a Millwall fan, you've got to get a copy. You've got to have a copy of this. He's updating at the moment. It's a huge amount of work that's gone into it. Every Millwall's ever played. And you can't call yourself a Millwall fan unless you've got a copy of Neil's book, so buy it. He needs the money as well. 52 games for Bill Roffey as left back. Born in Stepney in February 1954. His career spanned such sides as Crystal Palace, Leyton Orient, we've mentioned. He was on loan at Brentford. He joined Millwall in August 1984, played for 2 seasons for us. When they went to the USA, played non-league in Barnet. Lexos, I think, is a Portuguese side. Played at Margate, Canterbury, Margate Management, and then Tonbridge Angels. His debut for the Lions was made against Swansea on the 25th of August 1984. He scored in that game. The description of Bill, I like this description. There's good use of the word swashbuckling. Bill, a swashbuckling left back who liked nothing better than careering down the wing. Now, if that don't put an image in your mind, I don't know what will, listeners. Parasical kind of image. A swashbuckling left back who liked nothing better than careering down the wing. Played for Orient in the 1978 FA Cup semi-final defeat to Arsenal, and was signed by George Graham after making 300 appearances for the East London outfit, for the O's. He was part of the Millwall squad that won promotion from Division 3 in 1985, but was given a free transfer after Paul Hinchelwood was signed, after management in various non-league sides in Kent, and running a football camp in Dallas. Bill became a project manager for the building company St George plc, and now Hague. Bill Roffey, a name that we probably haven't mentioned before, and I don't know if we'll mention him again. For no reason other than the fact he doesn't crop up very often. But here's a chance, I thought, to mention Bill and to say thank you, Bill, for your contribution to Millwall, your service. The other name I've picked out was one of the goal scorers, Dean Neal, much more popular figure in Millwall history, a goal scorer. Born in Edmonton, Dean John Neal, born in Edmonton, 5th of January 1961, 152 games, 62 goals. There's a scoring record for you, listeners. That's not far short of a goal every other game, over 1981 to 1985. Started his career with QPR. He's played in America, the Tulsa Roughnecks. Millwall joined us in 1981 for 80,000. Figures there. Then went off into obscurity. Is that fair? I don't know if you're listening. If you're listening, Dean, £6,000 for Southend in January 1986. Cambridge, QPR, and finished up playing at Fisher in 1988. For a player that's rattled in 62 goals in 152 games, that seems like a career fade out that's quite dramatic to me. What do you think, listeners? Is there more to this than meets the eye? I don't know. The write-up for Dean says, Dean went through the ranks of QPR, but like his younger brother John Neal, played for the Lions. The leading scorer in 1983 with 19 goals. Saw him pick up a Football League trophy, winner's medal that season, and named Player of the Season, Player of the Year. Top scorer in 1984, who's part of the squad that secured promotion from Division 3 a season later. A personality clash with George Graham forced him out of the club. Wow. And he even had to sign on the dole after Millwall stopped paying his wages. Bitter. That's bitter, isn't it? He eventually left Southend United and is now a London cabbie. That's interesting, isn't it? Dean, if you're listening, mate, if you ever get to, I'd like to know more about that. That's interesting. There's a lot of ground being covered in that sentence, listeners, isn't there? A personality clash with George Graham forced him out of the club, and he even had to sign on the dole after Mill stopped paying his wages. He eventually left for Southend and is now a London cabbie. There's a player that scored 62 goals across 152 games, so there's a goal scorer, natural goal scorer, after he left the Lions, gone to Southend. Don't know if injury played a part in this, possible. A lot of injury, stunted careers back then, wasn't there, in the 80s? But to go with that kind of track record, okay, third division football, yes, I get that. But still, goal scorers are goal scorers. Southend, Cambridge, QPR and Fisher. Seems a strange story. I'd like to know more about that. There we are, dear listeners. That's a preview of sorts for tomorrow night's home game against the Reading in the Carabao Cup. I thought that might make a nice little preview. Fixture from 39 years ago. It will seem like just yesterday for anyone that's of a certain age. Might seem like ancient history to some of the kids. I don't know. That's the way of the world. So anyway, I will be there tomorrow night for the Carabao Cup game. I will be doing my usual business there, and there'll be another show, Achtung show later on in the week. A bit of a review of the win or loss tomorrow night, and we'll be back for sure at the weekend for the home visit of Bristol City. Huge game. It's going to be a big occasion. So anyway, there we are. Until the next edition of Achtung Millwall, hope you've enjoyed this pre-match preview. We'll do a few of these over the course of the season. Until the next edition, however, it's me, Nick Hart, signing out and saying Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
Achtung, Millwall.